Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today I'm going to be doing another tier list for you guys, and this time we are going to be talking about the best 1v1 Empire War civilizations in Age of Empires 2. If you guys aren't familiar with Empire Wars, it's basically a game mode where you start from the feudal age, or start in feudal age rather, and you have already a developed economy and you start the game there, and after that it's pretty much like regular random map. So it's just a fast-paced kind of game mode. And it's really interesting because there's a tournament coming up this October. It's a Red Bull tournament, $200,000, of course. A lot of you guys might know about it. But if you guys don't, get hyped. I personally will be participating along with a lot of other top players that make it. So it's going to be a very nice tournament and hopefully a spectacular show for you guys as the viewers to enjoy. I know Red Bull is very good with the production. And so yeah, that tournament is going to be played on Empire Wars, so it's a very relevant game mode right now. And I want to get ahead of myself, or get ahead of the curve a little bit, and help you guys with the best Empire War civilizations if you guys wanted to play, or just for you guys to follow a little bit better along with the tournament coming up. So I want you guys to be informed and know what civilizations are good and not so good for your own knowledge. So let's hop right in, and this is going to be the best Empire War civilizations. The only factor I will take into consideration pretty much is just how good the civilization is on the game mode and how good it is on the map pool that we have available for Empire Wars, which is the ranked ladder. You can just see the maps available there. So let's hop right in and check it out. Starting off right away with the Aztecs, and as you guys know, with a lot of my my tier list, Aztecs tend to make it quite high. I'm actually debating right now between A and S tier because it's an extremely strong civilization. But I think that Aztecs will probably be a highly contested civilization, and I'm going to put them at S tier. And the reason for this is because you start in the feudal age, Aztecs can right away start producing eagles from the barracks. They also have a very strong economy, and they produce units quickly from the production buildings. So massing a lot of units very fast, like eagles and archers, ends up being a really good tool for the Aztecs. Not only that, but you have always the option of going for monks in the mid game, which can lead to some very nasty monk and siege pushes in the castle age. So Aztecs in general, man, just an amazing civilization for this game mode, and for any game mode really. Next up, we've got on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, we got Bengalis. Believe it or not, Bengalis are worse on Empire Wars compared to random map. You thought it couldn't get worse, but they're actually worse, and they're going to go right into the D tier. And because Bengalis simply cannot function as a civilization. They start in feudal age, so you don't even get the extra 2 vills from the start. Like when you get to feudal age, normally you get an extra 2 villagers. This does not happen on Empire Wars, and so you start with a completely generic civilization here with Bengalis. You have no knights available. You have very bad long-term archers because you're lacking thumb ring. Well, not very bad, but pretty bad. And so you probably have to play towards your Ratha, but it's very hard to get to your Ratha because of how much pressure is coming in feudal age. So your best option with Bengali ends up being just try to survive with archers and scouts, getting to Ratha or some sort of crossbows in castle age. But most civilizations can just roll Bengalis, and it's not even going to be close. You have to get lucky with the Civ. You have to hope your opponent messes up pretty much to win. Next up, we got Berbers. Now, Berbers are actually a very dangerous civilization. And they're much better on Empire Wars, by the way, than random map, and I'll tell you why. Normally, Berbers, their weakness is getting to Castle Age, because that's where their power spike comes in, the cheaper stable units. And so having Berbers start in Feudal Age, which is much closer to Castle Age, gives them a big edge in Empire Wars. And I think for this reason alone, they're probably an A tier civilization or a high B tier civilization. I'm still debating, but I'm going to put them in low A tier for now. I'll put them in A tier. They're probably going to be low A tier. Just because they're very good, although a little bit predictable, because any Berber player will probably go cavalry in Castle Age, so you could maybe punish them because of their predictability, but it's a very powerful civilization in general. It also gives you good matchups against Cav Archer Civs because of the Camel Archer for late game as well. Next up, we got the Bohemians, another civilization in my opinion that's stronger in Empire Wars. For the same reason Berbers are stronger, because it's closer towards this power spike, and the power spike for Bohemians is going to be the Castle Age. However, one thing to note, you start with the blacksmith, and so getting the cheaper blacksmith for Bohemians doesn't really apply unless you want like a second blacksmith. But you still get the cheaper university in Castle Age, and you still get chemistry in Castle Age, which is a pretty nice boost. I personally think Bohemians are a very solid B tier. You have good options, and you develop very quickly. Keep in mind, you get the castlage, you make a monastery, and you get fervor and sanctity right away, which lets you have an amazing economy from the get-go. Alright, next up we've got Britons, and that's probably going to go to a high A tier civ. Might even be the best archer civilization for Empire Wars right now, because Ethiopians took a pretty big hit, a pretty big nerf on this particular game mode. I'll explain that later. But Britons are amazing. They start again in Feudal Age, very close to Castlage, where they get the extra +1 range and where they get cheaper town centers. Every civilization that has power spikes in Castlage is insanely strong on Empire Wars, just because you can get to Castlage so much quicker and get access to those power spikes earlier. The thing about Britons as well is that they get faster producing ranges, which lets you go for a little bit of an early rush, and also helps you get to Castlage because you have the faster gathering on the sheep. So Britons, you're using so many bonuses right away, and it's just such an insane civilization. Might even be an S tier civilization in some cases, but I'll put it probably top of A for the time being. Alright, next up we've got Bulgarians. This is a hard civ to place. It's either top of B tier or bottom of A tier. Basically, it's really strong right off the gate because you get cheaper blacksmith upgrades and your blacksmith works faster, which is amazing because you start with a blacksmith, so getting your techs right away from the start of the game at half price is going to be a pretty good value. I think it's half food price, sorry. So not exactly half price, but half food cost. It is a very strong bonus. So, example, when you're going for a scout rush, you can get forging and armor for 150 food total instead of 300 food total, which is a pretty big saving. You also get it really fast. So, I'm going to put them top of B tier for now. Actually, no, I'm going to put them bottom A tier. Maybe even ahead of Berbers, to be honest. Yeah, maybe even ahead of Berbers. I'll put them here for now. I might shift some things as the list goes on, though. Next up, we've got the Burgundians. Now, this is a very interesting talking point because Burgundians are actually weaker on Empire Wars compared to Random Map. On Random Map, they're like one of the best civilizations, no doubt. But on Empire Wars, they're actually a very slow civilization, and the game mode doesn't suit them at all. Basically, because you don't start in Dark Age, you can't get your economy upgrades earlier, and so you're going to get the economy upgrades same time as your opponent. You still get them cheaper, but it's really not that big of a bonus. And oftentimes you can't even afford to get the second wood upgrade and the second farm upgrade in Feudal Age because Feudal Age doesn't really last that long. People want to get the Castlage and gain access to those Castlage power spikes, which are very strong. So getting early economy upgrades will actually slow you down with the Burgundians, making the civ even slower than it usually is. So, in my opinion, Burgundians are pretty low on my list. Probably put them bottom of B tier. The reason why it's still B tier though and not like lower is because they still have access to Couturier, and Couturier, if it doesn't get nerfed, it's an insanely strong unit, and it does still get like the bonus with the relics, which could be useful if you pick up a few relics here and there. So they have good units and they have a good development past that early game. It's just that their slow starts kind of hinders them a little bit. Next up, we've got the Burmese. Honestly, Burmese are really not that bad on Empire Wars. Again, you start with the free wood upgrade from the get-go, so that's a pretty good bonus, and you also get a pretty good setup for the rest of the game because you get to start and you get to go with armory from the get-go. You save the resources, you get a quick development into Castlage, and then boom, right away you get Bowsaw for free, which is now even more saving and even more of a boost to your economy. So it's a pretty good and fast-paced civilization for Empire Wars, in my opinion. I'll probably put it low B tier. The only weakness really being that it doesn't have the best units. It doesn't have very good skirmishers, doesn't have very good archers, it doesn't have the best unique unit for the most part, and so ends up just being a cavalry, infantry, and a siege and monk civ, which are not bad options in most cases, but they're not the most flexible in general. But I would say definitely Burmese is a very solid civilization in my opinion. I like them. Alright, after that we've got the Byzantine. Byzantine are very interesting. You start in Feudal Age, which is a very big boost for the civilization because you get access to your cheaper trash units right away. You also get free Town Watch right away. In my opinion, Byzantine is a very easy top of B tier. It's the same civilization as in Random Map, but you start literally with all your bonuses applying, which is crazy, right? So you know what? I might even put it bottom of A tier. I really think it's a very strong civilization for Empire Wars. Next up, we've got the Celts. I've played Celts a couple times. They're actually not that bad because you start with a ton of villagers on wood, and the Celts wood bonus actually comes in hard, man. It kicks in and it gives you a lot of bonus. Also, going for like siege pushes right away or using the market to get up fast and going for a big siege push can be a really legit strategy. So Celts, while they're a bit one-trick in terms of what they want to accomplish, which is like a siege push and like right out to get aggression, I think they do it quite nicely. So I don't think it's going to be a popular civilization because it is very predictable, but I do think if you like that style of like heavy push, then Celts will be pretty strong on Empire Wars. Next up, we've got the Chinese. I'm going to put Chinese right at the top of B tier, and in my opinion, this is like the perfect example of a completely, not mediocre civ, but completely well-rounded civ. You don't start with extra villagers on Empire Wars, and you don't start with less resources. So Chinese gets a generic start. But they also get 5 extra population space on their town center, which saves you 1 house early on, which could be a nice boost. They also get cheaper technologies and a very wide tech tree. So overall, Chinese ends up being a very legitimate civilization. They get extra food on their farms as well. You're just getting a little bit of savings, all across the game, all around, the different, units and the different, strategies. You're just getting a little bit of savings here and there, but nothing crazy in terms of power spike. They're perfectly well-balanced, right in the middle of civilization, and for that reason, right at the top of B tier makes a lot of sense. Next up, we've got Cumans, and Cumans are actually close to being an S tier civ for me. I'm not sure if I'm going to go all the way and say it's an S tier right off the bat, but it's definitely quite close to it. It's either A or S tier, to be honest. And the reason for this is because you're getting a ton of wood savings with their cheaper stables and cheaper ranges, and you have the option to make a second town center in feudal age, which could come in clutch in a lot of cases. And so Cumans are getting a ton of savings early, and developing into a very strong mid-late game civ as well on open maps. So it's hard to exactly place them. I'm probably going to put them top of A, honestly. Probably right behind Britons makes sense. It's a very strong civilization, but I don't think it has the same power that maybe the Aztecs might have and maybe the Britons might have. Next up, the Dravidians. Not a great civ at all. You don't start with the wood. You don't have the best units at all. Dude, this might even just be another D tier civ, honestly. I just can't justify higher. It has terrible units. The stable's useless. You don't, like I said, get that extra 200 wood at the start of feudal age. And so you have a very slow start, and you have very bad units in Castle Age. And skirms, even if they're stronger, not the most useful when you don't have cavalry to back them up. So, yeah, easy D tier for me. Might even be worse than Bengalis, believe it or not. Wow, I might actually prefer Bengalis over Dravidians, which is a crazy thought. Yeah, that's a shocker right there. Next up, we've got Ethiopians. Now, this used to be an A or S tier civ on Empire Wars, but in my opinion, it's actually a C tier civ right now. They removed the extra 100 food and 100 gold that you start with in feudal age. That's no longer the case for Ethiopians, and so it's basically starting with a very generic start, and it doesn't have a lot of other bonuses. Like, it has faster firing archers, which is okay, and it has free pikemen, which is okay. But and then you get extra resources once you get the Castle Age, but that's not very good. So I don't think Ethiopians will be getting picked too often, and I don't see them being a very high priority for archer civs. In my opinion, it's a very generic and pretty underwhelming civilization this time around. Next up, we got the Franks, and Franks are, believe it or not, better on Empire Wars than on random map. Yes, because all the Franks bonuses pretty much start in feudal age. You get extra HP on your scouts from feudal age. You get the free farm upgrade for feudal age, and you also get the berry gathering bonus, which kicks in from the start of the game here. So Franks are an easy S tier civ for me. Might even be better than Aztecs in a lot of cases, but I'll put them behind Aztecs just because Aztecs do something that no other civ can do, which is like super heavy eagle monk spam, which just ends up being super powerful most of the time. But yeah, like Franks are an absolutely crazy civilization as well, in my opinion, for Empire Wars. Really strong. Next up, we got the Goths. Ooh, Goths are interesting. They might be weaker on Empire Wars than on random map, but yeah, they're very weak actually. Yeah, they're probably a D tier civ or a very low tier on C. I'll probably put them low C tier just because I think that they're always going to be better than Bengalis and Dravidians. I will say, so the reason why Goths are like pretty low on my list is that you can't really use any of their bonuses on Empire Wars. You get Loom from the start on Feudal Age, so that's not a bonus. You can't really make infantry early, so until Castle Age, infantry is not very viable, besides like a couple spears, because men at arm rushing is just not that viable. So yeah, you don't get any saving from going infantry, and you don't really have a lot of options other than that. And so Goths are really only good in Empire Wars if you can get to like mid-late game and start spamming up those cheap infantry. But before that, Goths are not giving you anything pretty much. Next up, we got the Gurjaras. This might be a shocker to many of you, but Gurjaras are really not the best on Empire Wars in my opinion, simply because you can't really start and put all your livestock in the mill, because you need your livestock to develop into the next age quickly. If you put them all in the mill, the food you get back from that, like that little trickle of food, I don't think is the most worth it. But Gurjaras are still an insanely strong civ when it comes to the units that they can make. Extremely strong camels, the shawarma riders that are very strong, and the unique unit that's insanely good. So I don't think Gurjaras are amazing on Empire Wars, but just because the civilization is that strong, I would probably put them in A tier, maybe even above the Bulgarians as well. It really is just that crazy based on the units you get alone. So yeah, just an amazing civ overall. Hindustani, interesting Hindustani here. Hindustani is weaker in Empire War than random map, because you don't get that villager saving from the early game, which is like in Dark Age both players make like, let's say 19 villagers on average, let's say 20 vills, and so Hindustani save like 10 food per vill, so it ends up being a good amount of saving there. In Dark Age you don't get that in Empire Wars. You start in Feudal Age, both players have a ton of villagers, and so you still get the saving from the start of the game, but the game is much faster paced. You don't make that many villagers, and so this doesn't give you as much value compared to some other civs and compared to random maps. So I would still say Hindustan is a very good civ and one to watch out for. I'm going to probably put it in A tier. I think it's quite strong, but maybe not as maybe not as powerful as Berbers, and not as flexible as Bulgarians and Gurjaras. Like that's kind of how I'd see it. Next up, we got the Huns, and the Huns are an easy A tier civ, probably right above the Berbers. The no houses is extremely good for Empire Wars because you save a ton of wood from the start. You also get cheap cav archers, which could come in as a very strong unit. You get faster working stables, which lets you put the pressure in early game, and in general, it has a very good late game for open maps. So yeah, Huns ends up being a very good overall civilization. Word of caution: don't make long swords with Huns. They're probably not going to win you the game. A friend told me that. I don't really know myself, but I'm just letting you guys know. I'm passing on the information. Next up, we've got the Incas. A Metro civ can never really be bad on Empire Wars, just because the ability to make eagles is actually a very good one. And Incas, on top of that, in my opinion, get a nice bonus with the houses. You start with a lot of houses in Empire Wars, and the fact that Incas get double population per house, so 10 instead of 5, you save a lot of wood in the early game with Incas, and in my opinion, quite a strong civ. I'd probably put them right behind Chinese in B tier. Very dangerous civilization, and it comes down to whether you like Mesocivs or not, whether you pick Incas or not, pretty much. Next up, we've got the Italians. Italians are pretty mediocre on Empire Wars, actually. Probably going to be like top of C tier. Yeah, they don't really do anything special. You don't get the saving in early game because you start in Feudal Age, so you don't save that 75 food usually that you do when going up to Feudal in random map. And aside from that, Italians pretty like generic. Even on like water maps, you don't have to make fishing ships, and so, like not really. And so the cheaper Italian fishing boats don't really apply that much. Doesn't really save you anything. So it ends up being a very generic water civ with a good tech tree. That's all Italians is pretty much. Next up, we got the Japanese, and it might follow suit actually in C tier, probably even behind Ethiopians. You don't need to make any mining camps because you start with most of them set up, so you don't get like the saving that you usually get with Japanese on random map. And besides that, the civilization doesn't have a lot to offer, and it actually has a very weak tech tree. So I would put Japanese in C tier probably. I think Ethiopians are even probably better because you get more savings with Ethiopians and at least that little bit of a power spike in Castle and Imp. So yeah, Japanese. Sorry, Spirit of the Law. They're really not the best. Shout out to the homie, but they're not the best civilization. Next up, Khmer. Khmer are actually going to be an S tier civ in my opinion. I think the civ is crazy. It might be a personal bias because I personally love Khmer, but I think the civilization is amazing. Getting access to amazing farms from the get-go, not needed to make mills. So on some maps like Frigid Lake, that could be insane, and also getting scorpions with an extra range in Castle Age makes for a very good composition against a lot of the archer civilizations. And in general, Khmer just have an amazing economy and good units to go for. So for me, Khmer, extremely strong civilization and something that's something that's always gonna give you good value. I think it's very easy to play on Empire Wars as well. Also, hiding in houses helps you in the early game against raids. So there's that as well. Next up, we've got the Koreans. Koreans are definitely better in Empire Wars than they are in Random Map, just because they skip over that Dark Age and get into Feudal Age, where Koreans can start now saving a lot of resources when going archers. They get the free armor right off the bat with archers and skirms, which actually is quite strong. So for me, Koreans are probably going to be in the mid tier. Probably right behind Bohemians, maybe behind Burgundians. God, it really just depends on how strong Burgundians are, really. Kind of a wild card, but I'll stick Koreans right there. For me, they're a pretty good civ. They're also close to Castle Age. Like, you can get to Castle Age quite fast, which lets you go guard towers and wagons, which can be amazing in some matchups. So, yeah, it's a pretty solid civ. Next up, we got Lithuanians. You don't start with the extra 150 food, so this civilization's kind of bad. It's kind of just a bad civ on this game mode. You get very little bonuses, man. Like, picking up relics for extra attack is one thing, but like you get nothing else really. I think Lithuanians are very bad civ, probably C tier, maybe even below Ethiopians. Yeah, they're really bad. There's no reason to pick Lithuanians over Franks, Huns, Bulgarians, Berbers, and other civs that I'm going to name as well. Next up, we got the Magyars, S tier civ once again. You might think it's weird, but Magyars are actually incredibly strong. Free forging and cheaper scouts lets you go for massive scout plays in the early game, and you also have an amazing late game with Magyars, one of the best in the game with cav archers and hussars, and even Magyar hussar if you want to. And so Magyars are a fantastic early game civ that leads to a fantastic late game, and their mid game is not too bad because you get the extra attack on knights for free, or on cavalry in general. And the amount of pressure they put on in the early game with the free forging, which also applies to your initial scout, is just incredible. I do think that the Franks might be better in some cases and a bit more flexible because of the strong economy, but Magyars are extremely dangerous and will be better on some maps in my opinion. Next up, we got the Malay, another absolutely terrible Empire War civ, just because you start from Feudal Age, and although you go up to Castle Age faster, you get no other bonuses, like literally no other bonuses on most maps. So if it's a land map, man, Malay are going to struggle. If it's a hybrid map, you're probably still going to struggle because you're still a very slow to start civ. Malay are probably worse than all of these, man. Honestly, it might even be worse than Goths. It's really not the best civ. Does this make sense? Maybe above Goths, just because at least it has some flexibility with like going up the castle faster, maybe. But yeah, it's really not the best civ. You have to do something cheesy with Malay to make them work. Otherwise, they're pretty useless. Just for you guys, dude, I disrespect Goths on the daily on my channel, so I know you guys love Goths. Listen, for the boys, I'm going to put Malay behind Goths, no problem. That's for you guys. Next up, we've got the Malians. I don't want to disrespect too much, Malians, another civilization that's not very good on Empire Wars, but not very bad either. Basically, you get good wood savings, but not as good as Random Map because a lot of the buildings that you need, you start with. So Malians end up not saving you that much. But they're not terrible. Like, you still have good units, you still have a good tech tree, and with the longer lasting gold, you can spam a lot of gold units in Castle Age in Empire Wars, which is not too bad. They do get a little awkward in late game. Listen, I'm going to put them bottom of B tier. I think the civilization has some options, but it's really not the strongest at all. Next up, we've got the Mayans, and that's going to go right to the bottom of S tier as well. It's an eagle civilization, so naturally it's going to be very high on my list. But not only that, Mayans get very, very fast development. Your sheep last longer, which is a really big bonus on most maps. You get cheap archers, which is just an amazing unit to go into. And you have a very solid mid-late game as well. In my opinion, Mayans is one of those civilizations where if you have a smooth game, you will destroy everyone. It's so strong. Next up, we got the Mongols, another civilization that is absolutely terrible on Empire Wars, because on most maps there's no boar, and so you're not getting that hunt bonus that you normally do, and you don't have that speed that you usually have in random map getting a fast feudal age. Here you start in feudal age with no hunt, or just some deer, but that's like very mild hunt. So Mongols are actually very weak on a lot of maps. I'm probably gonna put them bottom of C tier somewhere. Maybe ahead of the Goths. If there's a lot of hunt on a map, it could be good. But like even still, it's really not the best Civ. God, it's hard to say. I'll probably put them ahead of Goths because they still have bloodlines. So like you could make something happen with some hunt, like some deer. And so you get some fast feudal age, or like some heavy feudal age shenanigans going with them maybe. And then you have an amazing late game with Mangadai. So there is that line of thought, which could be okay. But it's really not the strongest Civ at all. Next up, we've got the Persians. Now, Persians are pretty mediocre across the board. But what I will say is that you start in feudal age with your town center working faster. So that's a nice boost, I guess. But you don't start with the extra resources. So it ends up just not being that strong. The extra 50 food and 50 wood from the start of the game, you don't get that in Empire Wars. So it's really not that strong at all. Again, probably very weak, right? Like it's really not the best Civ. I can't see you ever going for Persians. There's no reason to go for them. Maybe ahead of Malay because you still get like good knight play, I guess, in castle. But you get probably ahead of Mongols because you do get like the faster working town center, which could help out a little bit. Maybe even ahead of Japanese, but probably not, honestly. Next up, we've got the Poles. Oh man, am I conflicted about Poles. In theory, it's a good Civ because you get to drop farms that are, giving you extra resources, but Poles are actually a little bit slow to get going. Also, they place your initial folwark, which can be annoying because sometimes it's placed so poorly, so you can't really farm around it properly. And just randomly making a folwark to just start farming with Poles is actually not that good. Just because it saps a lot of wood, and sometimes you don't have the wood to be able to invest into it like that. I don't know. It feels like Empire Wars might be too fast-paced for Poles. But then again, you get to mine a lot of stone and get some gold value from Poles. So they have some plays, going for them. But if anything, it's a very awkward Civ to play. So I'm going to put it... Listen, I'm going to put it bottom of B tier with the condition that it might be good if people figure out how to play it. But it's not an easy Civ to play, okay? So it might be A tier, S tier if people really figure it out. And it might just be C tier, D tier, completely forgotten if people, don't bother with it. So, yeah, right now it's in the middle. I don't know where it stands, really. Next up, we got the Portuguese, and you get some good bonuses to the Portuguese. And in my opinion, it's a very good water civilization because you get, strong water units, and you also get the gold discount, which helps with both land and water. So on some maps, Portuguese can actually be quite decent, but it's probably just a B tier Civ. I'll put them ahead of Burgundians in my opinion. Quite strong on water maps and quite okay on some land maps because you can just spam gold units and get discounts, which is a pretty good strategy. So yeah, mediocre Civ overall. Saracens, S tier Civ for Saracens, I think. Yeah, probably ahead of Khmer as well. It's a very strong Civ, man. Having the market access early is just so OP because you're able to just like make the markets, sell your stone right away, buy whatever resource you need, and just either go for a castle really fast or go for a heavy feudal age attack with extra resources. And both those approaches are viable with Saracens and are actually quite good. So in my opinion, civilization is very strong and leads to a lot of nice power spikes. Next up, we got the Sicilians. And Sicilians, believe it or not, are going to be top of B tier, maybe even ahead of the Chinese. They're very dangerous on Empire Wars because you can't make counter units against them. So if they just go like archers, Going scrims against them, you do less damage, so it's possible, but it's not very effective. And for that reason, I feel like Sicilians get off to a really strong start oftentimes, and they have good units as the game goes on, with options to go into Cavalier with extra armor using the Holbrook technology, or you can go for the Donjons and the First Crusade tech, which is quite a strong tech in general. So yeah, pretty good options with Sicilian across the board. Next up, we've got the Slavs. Slavs are interesting. Hard to say exactly where I'd put them, but they are not the strongest civ, but not exactly the worst civ either, because you start with production buildings, which gives you extra housing room, which saves wood early, which helps a lot with the rushes. And you also get quite strong siege pushes, and with that castle technology that could come up as well, that could be nice. You get to get the castle technology and just spam castles everywhere with Slavs. You tend to have a lot of extra wood in Empire Wars, so you don't mind spending it on castles. I think it's a good civ, but it's probably very slow to start. I'll put him in B tier, probably ahead of Malians, but yeah, it's an okay civ. Next, we got the Spanish. I'm going to put it in top of C tier. It's not a very good civ, but I swear, I played against Yo a couple times, and if you get the Conquistadors, which is like not hard to do because you're kind of close to Castle Age, the civ is actually just insane. Like, it's actually just a good civ if you can get the conks. But it's very predictable and it's not flexible. Same problems that Spanish always has. But I put it top of C tier because all those C tier civs have a bad start, but at least Spanish have good units and a good late game. So there's that. Next up, we got the Tatars, and the Tatars are probably going to be top of A tier. It depends who you talk to. They might vote Tatars higher and like put Khmer lower. I personally don't think Tatars are that spectacular. Like, they do get some nice bonuses, but if you don't make use of the free thumb ring timing, they're really not. They don't have that much else going for them. They do have the Keshik, which is strong as well, and a decent economy, but they're really all in towards that thumb ring timing in Castle Age. And sometimes that's just not enough for me, and other civs just do more. So I don't know. I think Tatars are very good, but maybe a little bit too one trick in the early game. Obviously, as the game goes on, they become a little bit more flexible, but the start just feels a little bit too predictable. Next up, we got the Teutons. Teutons are probably going to be somewhere like top of C tier, low B tier. They're not a terrible civ because you do get cheaper farms, which is actually not bad from the start of the game. And you also get the conversion resistance, which comes up. You get good cavalry. You get overall good development, and you're a good counter towards melee civs in general. So a good counter towards cav civs. I think for that reason alone, I put it in B tier, ahead of the Poles even, but behind everything else. Yeah, I think it's a good counter to melee civs. Against archer civs, it might not be the best civ, but against melee civs, it could be pretty good. Next up, we got the Turks. Turks might just be another B tier civ for me. You get extra pierce armor on your scouts in Feudal Age, which is actually amazing. Like, that has to be an underrated bonus. And you get free light cav, which lets you control the game in Castle Age, also with extra armor. And you also get an amazing late game. In my opinion, Turks are great. I'm going to put them actually quite high in B tier. Keep an eye out for Turks. They're going to be strong in my opinion. And at least they're going to be a wild card pick if you want to, if you enjoy that playstyle. Next up, we got Vietnamese. Vietnamese are actually an underwhelming civ for Empire Wars. You do get some savings on your technologies, on your economy technologies, but it's not really enough because you get 50 wood saved on double bit axe, 75 for horse collar, and another 100 for bow saw. So you get to save some wood, but other than that, what do Vietnamese do? I mean, they have pretty good archers. They have extra HP. Not the best civ. I'm going to probably put it in B tier though, because it's an average civ in my opinion. Probably ahead of Celts, but it's much better in random map in my opinion. But the one thing to watch out for Vietnamese is the fact that they get pretty good cav archers, so that's not too bad. Next up, we got the Vikings, and Vikings are probably going to be close to the top of B tier as well. They're not going to be insane because they got nerfed with the thumb ring being removed. But in my opinion, it's still a dangerous civ. So I'll put them in B tier. Has an amazing economy with free wheelbarrow right off the bat. It's good for water maps in general, and it's gonna give you a pretty good development even on land maps with a lot of economy. So I'll put it in B tier, and that's gonna do it for my list. So looking back now, any changes I want to do, dude, I'm honestly very happy with this list. I can't really think of any change I want to do. I feel like there's a good balance between the top and the bottom. like Bengali and Dravidians are in a league of their own. Like they're just terrible, unplayable almost. And even Malay is really bad, but like I'd much prefer playing with Malay because at least you have like cheap elephants which could come up. You can at least have the fast imp timing which could like win you games. Whereas Bengali Dravidians, I can't use, like there's no reason. You have to get lucky in your opponent messing up to win with these civs pretty much. Alright, that's going to do it for my Empire Wars tier list, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. If you agree, let me know in the comments below. If you disagree, also let me know. Love to read your comments as always. Take care, guys. Stay safe, and peace.